expeditions, Everest has held mystique for both mountaineers and the general public. At 29,035 feet, it has the highest elevation above sea level and the highest altitude. In 1953, a British expedition led by Colonel John Hunt resulted in Tenzing Norgay and Edmund Hillary summiting Everest for the first time. This expedition team trained in Snowdonia and stayed at the Pennygreed Hotel during their preparations for many months prior to leaving for the Himalayas. Testing for the oxygen equipment took place at the Climbers Club hut near the Capo Currig. News of the successful summit reached London on the day of the Queen's coronation. Here is an original newspaper from that date telling of the incredible feat. However, did local men Sandy Irvine and George Mallory actually conquer Everest first? Sandy Irvine was born in Birkenhead. George Mallory was born in Moberly. In 1924, George Mallory and Sandy Irvine disappeared somewhere high on the mountain's northeast ridge. They were last sighted only a few hundred metres from the summit, and it is unknown whether they reached the summit or not on June 8, 1924. George Mallory's remarkably preserved body was discovered 75 years after he mysteriously vanished during his attempt to be the first man to summit Everest. He was found in a position of self-rest at the bottom of a ski slope with a broken leg and a head injury. Did they make it? Mallory's daughter thinks so and stated that her father was going to leave a photograph of his wife on the summit. No photograph was found on his body, so did he deposit it on the summit? Secondly, his goggles were in his pocket, indicating that he died at night. This implies that he and Irving had made a push for the summit and were descending very late in the day. Their cameras have never been found, which could provide evidence of whether they summited or not. I would like to introduce a world-class climber, alpinist and adventurer, Leo Holding. Leo is one of the world's top climbers and veterans of many epic ascents. In 2007, Leo retraced the steps of Mallory on Everest for the film The Wildest Dream. Leo lives in the Lake District.
Now, I wouldn't say it's impossible that they did it, but my honest opinion is, although it's possible, it's not probable. Meaning I don't really think they did it. The reason I don't think they did it is because that second step at 8,700 meters, people talk about a 90-foot cliff barrier, which is kind of true, but the first 75 feet is easy, it's scrambling, but then the last 15 feet is actually overhanging. It's an overhanging corner with a crack in it where the Chinese ladder is, and it is pretty difficult. It's probably about the standard of HVS on the UK system at sea level, which is about the maximum standard that Mallory was climbing at sea level in 1924. I did a lot of Mallory's routes here in the UK to get an idea, and it's pretty hard, you know, to be doing that standard of climbing at that altitude, that strung out. I think my theory is Mallory got to the crux of the second step. Irvine, who wasn't such a good climber, probably stopped at the bottom of the cliff barrier, which is basically walking to get to. Mallory got up there, had a look and thought, oh, this is as far as we're getting, which was only a couple of hundred meters below the summit. Then they turned around, and then on an exposed section known as the house roof, it's like walking across a slate roof, I reckon Irvine probably slipped and pulled Mallory off to his death, and that's where Mallory's body was found, right underneath it. So yeah, that's my theory about the mystery of Mallory and Irvine.
I am at the Mountain Heritage Trust in Blencathra, where they are kindly letting me examine the equipment used by Mallory and Irving and the replicas of the clothing they would have used. It is incredible what they managed to achieve while dressed in these garments. Researchers from the University of Leeds, Lancaster and Derby and Southampton spent 3 years examining fragments of the garments that Mallory wore on Everest. The researchers found that Mallory had been wearing a hand-knitted jumper, 3 pairs of socks, a blue and white shirt, a vest that is in a fibre blend with silk, and puttees which were narrow cloth wound tightly around the lower leg. He was also wearing a Burberry windproof climbing suit made of densely woven fine cotton as an outer layer. Their research revealed that the layers of wool, silk and cotton were lighter than modern climbing equipment and extremely comfortable to wear. Mallory's boots were the lightest ever used on Everest. Irvine and Mallory's clothing system formed a sophisticated and effective clothing system which was adequate for the summit attempt. Knowledge of the importance of acclimatization was just evolving at the time of Irvine and Mallory's expedition. It is known that they were both supremely fit and they had a long walk over the Tibetan Plateau, which is at 3,658 to 4,877 metres, was excellent preparation. They also followed the modern-day principles of climbing high and sleeping low.
I'm Julie Summers, Sandy Irvine's great niece. We grew up as children listening to stories about Mallory and Irvine on Mount Everest, and it was part of our family legend. And it was only when I got to the age of 37 that I began to do research into his life and to try and find out more about what he and Mallory got up to on the loftiest peak on Earth. I had a fascinating time meeting people who'd known him because, of course, 25 years ago there were people still alive who had been involved. There was a young man called Peter Lunn who, aged 9, got to know Sandy when Sandy learnt to ski. And so we had this absolutely fantastic experience of meeting people who genuinely thought that they had both got to the top. What do I think? I think it's a really difficult question. Emotionally, I would love to believe that they stood on the summit of the Earth. But I think science would probably be against that. And I think in all probability, they unfortunately died on their way up rather than on their way down. But that's me being the realist. As a family member, I'd love to say, yes, they made it, and they did indeed stand on the highest spot on Earth.
Unless one of the Kodak cameras that Irvine and Mallory were carrying finally gets found, we will never know whether one of these two brave local men were the first in the world to reach the summit. Even so, reaching the death zone in Everest in 1924 was a remarkable accomplishment.